Klockan 16. Nu. Så då kör vi väl igång. Det kommer säkert någon eftersläntrare, så jag kan tänka mig. Välkommen till Provning 216. Mitt namn är Anders Nordström, ordförande i SMAD. Er som inte vet om det. Det vet nog kanske de flesta här. Jag tänkte prata lite grann om vårens provning. Det händer ju väldigt mycket nu. Om 14 dagar redan så blir det ju Adelphi med Alex Bruce, Jenny Karlsson. Vi har en plats kvar till den provningen. Så har ni inte anmält er så har ni möjlighet. Det finns en plats kvar. Och här precis innan provningen började, om ni har läst era mejl, så kom det ut ett mejl om nästa provning, eller provningen som blir efter det till årsmötet, som är den 13 mars. Det skickades ut här 5-10 minuter innan provningen började. Då kan ni börja gå in och anmäla er till nu om ni vill. Kommer att prova 10 stycken SMAD och SVF-buteljeringar under ledning av Micke Svälas. Det som också kommer hända sen under veckan här som kommer, det kommer att komma ganska tätt med grejer nu, det är att nästa lördag kommer vi att gå ut med inbjudan till superspecialprovningen som kommer att äga rum den 4 december. Och som jag berättat för er förut, om ni minns då, så har vi ju 8 stycken fantastiska buteljeringar. En Glenlivet 21 från 80-talet någon gång. Det buteljerar på 80-talet. Lagavulin 20 från festival 2020. Little Mill 29. Macallan Oscuro. Portellen 40. Den senaste Private Collection från Gordon MacPhail. En Aberlour Pure Malt Scotch Whisky. Också buteljerat på 80-talet, en 12-åring. Glenord 30 och sen en Lafroig 25 då, 2007 års version. Den 25 februari kommer det gå ut inbjudan till den provningen som kommer vara den 25 mars. Det är Glenallachie med Juliette Buchan. Där har vi 7 stycken single cask Glenallachie. Och vi toppar då med en 30-åring och en 28-åring där. En 30-åring på Virgin Oak och en 28 på Oloroso Sherry. Sen är det 5 olika buteljeringar till då som är släppta för Europa eller för den svenska marknaden. Det var lite information om vad som kommer att hända i våren. Och Callum, I will handle over to you in Scotland.
Okay.
Please take over the tasting.
Okay, well, firstly I'd like to introduce you to our still house here at Glenfarclas. It maybe sounds a wee bit echoey, but that's because we're actually doing the first ever live tasting in Sweden, or for Sweden, from our still house. So the view behind you is actually number 3, number 3 spirit still, and this side is number 2. All the whiskey you're going to taste tonight actually run through this spirit on my left-hand side as you're looking at us. So it's quite a unique place to do a tasting. Hopefully it works. We've had pretty stormy weather here in Scotland. Kind of Swedish weather, I would call it. I love coming to Sweden when it's nice and cold and snow. I'm not quite so keen on coming to my work when there's lots of snow and cold. And right now in Scotland, it's minus 15 and 50 mile an hour winds, so it's not the most attractive place to be. But hey, this is where we are. So anyway, welcome to this tasting. I have no idea your introduction was there in Swedish, but I did hear some bad language during it. I managed to pick up Macallan, Aberlour, 1 or 2 other names, Port Ellen, swear words in Scotland and in Glenfarclas. So I did hear that in amongst the Swedish chat that was going on. So I take it everybody can actually hear me, can they? Yeah? Yep, good. So some of you guys have been at my tastings in Sweden at Cinderella different places. For the guys that haven't, we'll just take you through who we are, where we are, and what makes Glenfarclas so unique amongst other whiskies. But I think the best way to start it is by starting with the first whiskey, and then we can talk about the actual distillery. So the first whiskey we're going to taste today is actually 25-year-old, which is just This is what we would describe Christmas in a glass. The nose in this whiskey is just absolutely tremendous. It's lots of boiled fruit, toffee, caramel, a sort of burnt caramel note. Now that caramelly note you'll get a lot more prominent in some of the family casks, and you'll certainly get it in 105. And that comes through the process that we do here at Glenfarclas when we distill our product. But we will talk about that a wee bit later on. So lovely nose in this. It's sitting at 43%, which is what we bottle our 25-year-old and our 30 and 40-year-old. Lots of dark chocolate going on in there. A lovely dram to start the afternoon with when it's -15 outside. So I know every time I'm in Sweden and I travel, you guys will always say, oh, don't put water in your whiskey. Callum is going to put water in his whiskey today, as he always does. And the reason for that is to open up all the flavour compound, open up the nose in it. And remember, guys, if you put too much water in your whiskey, the golden rule is add more whiskey to your glass, and that always makes it last that little bit longer. There's a little bit of peatiness coming through now when you add water to it. That's a remnant from the days when we used to peat our own barley on site. So you've got to remember inside this bottle, there's casks that are 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. So they've held whiskey once or twice before. And up until 1972, that would be peated whiskey at Glenfarclas. So remember, when you're drinking some of the older expressions of Glenfarclas, you will get that sort of sweet, Speyside, peaty nose coming through. And it's definitely there in that 25-year-old. So guys, Slangy Va, enjoy. Wow. That just has a lovely mouth feel. It just coats your palate. There's no burn whatsoever. There's a slight woodiness coming through, but there's no burning feel. Just absolute class in a glass is how we would describe that. So while we're sipping a 25-year-old, I'll tell the people who don't know where we are, where we're situated in Scotland. We're actually in Speyside. We're about 1,500 feet up the side of Ben Rinnes, which is the highest mountain in Speyside. It's what we call a Munro, being over 3,000 feet high. And we get all the water, so for this whiskey comes off the side of Ben Rinnes. We actually pipe it down to the distillery so as it doesn't pick up a lot of influence off the hill. And then we use it for mashing and distillation. So it's the same process water for mashing and distillation. We use around about 1 million litres of water per day in production of our single malt. 95% of that is returned back into the River Spey, and 5% becomes final product and gets filled into casks. So you can see the sort of volumes of water needed to make whiskey. The distillery itself is owned by the Grant family. Our current chairman is a gentleman called John Grant, and he actually lives in Glenfarclas House, which is about 100 yards from the still house where I'm sitting right now. So John can look out his window and overlook everything that's going on in production. Now, John is 5th generation, as I say. His family bought the distillery in 1865 for £511, 19 shillings. Now, in today's money, that equates to about £300,000. So when you think we have casks of whiskey in a warehouse here maturing at Glenfarclas, and the value of these casks singly, some of them are worth over £2 and £3 million. It was quite a good investment back in 1865 to pay £511 for the place, so quite unique. It was bought then by a gentleman called John Grant, and he passed it on to his son George, who passed it on to George Grant, who passed it on to George Grant, who then passed it on to John Grant, our current chairman. And John will pass it on to his son, George Grant. Now, George will be the 6th generation to run the family business, which will make us the oldest family-owned distillery in Scotland. So family-owned by a Scottish family, still family-run as well. So there are other distillers out there who are owned by one family, but the family at Glenfarclas still come to work 7 days a week, still employ us guys, still look after us. So they are very, very hands-on. So that makes us quite unique. Everybody enjoying the 25-year-old? Any comments or questions who want to come in on it? Nope, all very quiet. I think if you're asking a question, you're muted. I do see a mouth going there, but you're actually muted. Okay, so I'm not hearing anybody asking anything.
Callum, in my opinion, this was a great start of the tasting.
Yeah, it's a pretty good dram. I'll be honest with you and say it's probably my third favourite in the Glenfarclas range. My favourite go-to whisky, as you'll all know, is a 21-year-old. And over the past year, I've developed a lovely passion for the 12-year-old. 12-year-old Glenfarclas is an absolutely stunning dram. So 25, yeah, it's a cracking whisky. And the big advantage about Glenfarclas is that we have kept that age statement on the bottle. So when you want to buy a 21-year-old whisky or a 25-year-old whisky, that is exactly what you get. It says it on the label, and that's what you get. We don't name our whiskies after, I'm going to try and be polite, hookers in a Spanish brothel, different types of trees, you name it. We name them what they are. They're 25-year-old. That's what it is. When you buy 5-year-old whisky, you will get it here. It's also very reasonably priced for a 25-year-old whisky. Here in Scotland, you can buy that for £130. If you get whisky at that age from some other distilleries up here, you'll pay £1,200, £1,400 for it. So it's really, really approachable. Quite a lot is, why is your whisky so cheap compared to others? And the answer is that we don't have a marketing department. This label has been in these bottles since, God, the past 30, 40 years. Same writing, Glenfarclas, written across it. That was actually John's grandfather's way of signing Glenfarclas when he was writing to people. So they adapted that and used it as the label. So we have no fancy marketing, no sort of teams doing things like that. We only have a sales team and a distillery team. And that's why we're managing to keep prices down, keep things the way they were traditionally, and give them to guys like you to enjoy at a really, really reasonable price.
Callum, I will tell everybody, if somebody wants to tell a question, you can unmute and just do the question to Callum, do the tasting. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That works for me. If people want to jump in, as long as they don't all jump in at once, but that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next whisky, which is from Family Cask range. It's a 1986 refill butt. Now, refill means it's been filled 3 times. So at Glenfarclas, we fill casks 4 times. The first time it's fresh fill sherry, and we have first fill sherry on here. Then the next time it's refill sherry, and then the third filling we call it refill. So that's its third filling, and then the fourth filling it'll be a 4th fill cask or a plain cask. So sometimes though with these refill casks you get a bit of a surprise because the first 2 fills haven't taken so much out of the wood, and then when you fill them for a third time and you open them up, some of them can actually be pretty special. And this 1986 is pretty good, to be honest with you. It's sitting at 47.7%, and there were only 551 bottles of it, so it's quite unique. You're getting that lovely sort of toffee nose coming through in it as well. I should probably tell you a little bit about the Family Cask range. So the Family Cask range, you can see it's written on the bottle. This is a range of whisky that we brought out in 2007. When wandering through the warehouse, Mr. Grant discovered that we had whisky from every single year, from 1952 right up until 2007 or 8. So he decided he would launch the Family Cask range, which was a bottling from every year from 52 up until 1990. I think, was the latest one there. So he went up to their 15-year-old and he launched them wondering what would happen. And actually they took off. People wanted to buy their birth year, their children's birth year. They wanted a whole collection. So we went from just dabbling to see how much people wanted it to selling huge amounts of family casks. And now they're world renowned. People will always come to Glenfarclas and look for their birth year or look for their children's birth year, which makes it quite a unique thing to have, you know. So when I've got a family cask for my two children, I've got a 2009 single bottle for my daughter's birthday as well. So yeah, it's quite a unique thing to have. So if any of you guys visit Glenfarclas, the one thing you want to do is try your birth year or buy your birth year. It's always for sale. You should always remember that. So we'll try this 1986. Lovely. Now, 1986 was 4 years before I started in the whisky industry. I started in 1990 at a distillery in Perthshire. Yeah, we should try this. I know some of you probably already have, and haven't been in Sweden before. I know that you definitely will have tried it before. I've got this glass to my mouth. So cheers. Wow. Oloroso sherry cask is what we fill our whisky into here at Glenfarclas. When we get to second, third open, so it's not as powerful, it's not filling your cheeks in. It's more sort of apple-y, sort of boiled fruit, boiled apples. There's a little touch of spiciness to it as well, so we get a nice sort of spiciness coming off the wood. But that big sherry hit is now gone, so you're not getting that massive sherry punch. To me, that's a really well-balanced single cask. Bear in mind that these are single casks, so every single one is different. So at the distillery we fill, well, this week, we filled over 350 casks of whisky. And when we open any one of these 350 casks in 10 years' time, they will all be slightly different to the one next to it. So again, that's what makes a family cask so unique. Any questions on this 1986 cask?
Yes, Callum, I notice it is not so common that you have a low alcohol content in your family casks. This is fairly low while it is below 50%. Why is it like that? Is it depending on where you have had it in your warehouse or the type of cask?
Well, some of it is where it's been put in the warehouse. Other things, the cask, you've got to remember in the 80s, there was a massive sort of downturn in the whisky industry. A lot of distilleries shut down. So some of the casks we would fill possibly weren't as good quality as what we could have filled 10 years before or 10 years after. So that has a bearing on it. But a lot of it is to where it's been in the warehouse, what warehouse it's been in. If it's been in warehouse number 13 or 12, where we have a different floor in it, the alcohol strength can sort of stay higher. If it's been on the bottom floor, the alcohol strength can get slightly lower. So a lot of it's to do with where it's been positioned in the warehouse. Any other questions, guys? No.
Yeah, come back. Well, no, I have the microphone correct. I've been told put down the microphone so I can be heard, or maybe the opposite. You said this was a third time filling, and yes. You also said something about that it maybe had not taken out so much of the cask during the first two fillings. I must say I'm very surprised that it was so tasteful, so powerful with the third filling. I find this as a very, very elegant whiskey.
Yeah, agree, and actually I picked a cask for a special distillery bottling 3 years ago, and it was a third fill cask that I picked because I love a sherry whiskey and I love a second fill, but sometimes I think if you get the right third fill cask, you get to pick up the flavour of the distillery, you get to pick up the flavour of the new make distillate that runs through this still house. And yes, the cask obviously polishes it off, but I sometimes think when you drill in a little bit deeper and you actually get deeper into it, you can pick up more flavours coming through. And I don't know if you guys know what apple custard is, apple pudding is, apple crumble, but that's exactly, to me, what that tastes like, is boiled apples with a biscuity, spicy topping on top of it. That's what's in that glass. And it's just, to me, that's a lovely dram. It's a lovely dram.
Yummy, yummy.
So will we move on to the next one then, or sit and enjoy that one for a little minute? Or? So we'll just talk about production then before we move on to the next one. As I said at the start, I'm actually sitting in the still house at Glenfarclas. It's probably a little bit echoey. That's because we describe our still house like a cathedral, like an old church. When you've got that lovely echoey noise, we've got these big tall stills in the background, massive big airy building we've got here at Glenfarclas. I say we've got 6 stills, 3 pairs. And this year we're going to produce over 2.6 million litres of alcohol through these stills. So right now we're producing 68,000 litres of alcohol per week at Glenfarclas. We start producing on a Sunday night and we finish producing at 1:30, 2:30 this afternoon. And it's a huge amount of production for us guys to make. But that shows you how much our brand is growing over the past few years, that we have to lay down so much stock for the future bottlings. Right now we hold 85,000 casks maturing on Glenfarclas in our warehouses. And this year we'll build another 4 warehouses that will take our overall storage of casks up to 110,000. That's a massive amount of casks. When you think moving forward, we need to sell it, we need to bring the money in for making it. And the brand does that. The product in that glass does that for us, and that's what allows us to keep stepping up production and stepping up production. So it's a really nice place to be as a business, but it's an equally nice place to be as a distillery manager. When I took this job 8 years ago and I met Mr. Grant and Mrs. Grant for lunch, I knew right away with the passion they had and the way they spoke about their family business and the family before them, that's where I wanted to work. But it wasn't until I actually started traveling with the brand to places like Sweden, Germany, France, Holland, and heard and saw how much the public loved this brand, that I actually appreciated just how well it's welcomed all over the world, just what this label means to people all over the world. I remember when I was traveling to Sweden 2 years ago, I was getting off an aircraft in Stockholm and I had my Glenfarclas Holdall with me on my shoulder. And this young lad came up to me and he was pointing at my bag and he was talking to me in Swedish. Now, my Scottish isn't very good. My Swedish is a lot worse. And I asked him if he could speak in English to me. And he was saying that his father's favourite dram was Glenfarclas. And because of that, it was his favourite dram. And I'm getting off this aircraft, as I say, in Stockholm. And I went in my bag and I gave him 2 beanie hats. Now, I know some of you guys have our beanie hats. And I have never seen a gentleman so pleased in my life to be given 2 woolly hats, one for him and one for his father. And that was at the point I realised, wow, people just love Glenfarclas and they just love what it's about. As I say, it's a lovely place to work and the family treat everybody so well. So when I'm doing presentations like this on a Saturday afternoon, it's lovely to see people from other countries enjoying home. And believe me, we do enjoy this product at home quite often. And after this tasting, I'll be trying some more of it at home. So it's always good. So the next whiskey we'll move on to is 1993. Now this is a refill sherry butt, which means it's second fill. Sorry, it's second fill. There were 511 bottles of this, and it's 57% alcohol, so it's a lot stronger. When you nose it though, the first thing I get is that beautiful toffee, burnt caramel note coming off. That comes from our process. Now, I touched on that earlier. Our stills that you see behind me are direct fired. Now, direct fired means that they still have a fire underneath them burning to warm them up and boil up the stills. Now, we're the only distiller left in Scotland who direct fires 100% of their production. There's a couple of distilleries at 25%, there's one is 50%. At Glenfarclas, we're 100%. Now, inside our wash still, the wash still's this big guy over here. Inside there is a copper chains hang down over the side of it, and they turn really, really slowly during distillation to stop the fermented wash burning to the pot. Now, in between the copper chain and the still, there's about 3 or 4 millimeters where the liquid does start to caramelize and burn to the copper, and it gives us this lovely toffee, burnt caramelly note that you're getting when you nose this whiskey. So it's to me, that is just typical Glenfarclas. Direct fired still, burnt toffee, Christmas cake. Again, we'll put some water in this glass. Wow, it just opens up. You're getting nice notes coming off that second full cask. You're getting a little bit Oloroso coming through, but not too overpowering. But that dark chocolate toffee notes are just absolutely fantastic. So let's try this one. Wow. The water's just taking that alcohol off of it. So any of you guys that have been in my classes in Sweden, you'll know that I'll talk about drinking wine at 14% or 12% alcohol, and you get lovely berry notes coming through, and blackberries and raspberries and strawberries. That's because the alcohol strength is low. If you drink alcohol at 57%, it starts to numb your taste buds a little, so you don't get so much flavour coming through. So by reducing the spirit down to maybe 30, 20%, you open it up, the nose opens up. If you warm it in your hands, the nose warms up in the glass. And then when you add a little water to taste it, the flavour profile just erupts in your palate. That's an absolutely stunning whiskey. So do we have any comments on the 1993 family cask?
The best so far.
The best so far. You know, it is possibly the best so far, but I might have to go through them all again at the end just to double check. Nice.
I say second best.
The second best. Well, I know we vote at the end to see what our favourite one is out of them all. So it's always interesting to get that reaction and see just how people's palates are different and how people like different flavours. So, and that's what Scotch whisky is all about, is opinions and talking about it. That's my wife always tells me that I can't go anywhere on holiday or with her, but somebody, I'm talking about whiskey to somebody. But that's just because it's such an interesting subject. It lets you meet lovely people. Everybody has an opinion on it, and nobody's opinion is wrong. So that's quite important.
So, Callum, one question regarding watering. I often see that sherried whiskey can be a bit dying when you water it. Is that depending on what type of casks, or is it the spirit from the beginning that can handle water differently?
I think some lighter spirits don't handle water just as well. You don't have to put in as much. Glenfarclas is very heavy sherried, so I would more go towards the spirit type. So heavier, sort of more whiskey will take more water because you want to split that oil open. But some lighter whiskies, like where I came from to here, Deanston's a really light whiskey. And if you put too much water in Deanston, you totally lose it. So that's just an example of how you can lose it. But Glenfarclas can handle water. It can absolutely handle water going in it. But say never be scared to put water in whiskey. The one thing I don't put in whiskey is ice, because you start to numb it. It's like chill filtration. We don't chill filter any of our whiskey here because it freezes the fatty esters, and the fatty esters are where the flavour compounds are. So never be scared to put water in, but I will never put ice in my whiskey. The only thing I put ice in is gin and tonic.
Agreed.
Talking about sherry, what kind of sherry do you use at Glenfarclas? Is this always Oloroso sherry? And is it a special producer?
Yeah, it's always Oloroso sherry, and we've been using the same bodega since 1982 or 3. Jose Miguel Martinez, who's actually a massive company now, but back then they were a very small family-run business. And the Grant family like to deal with family-run businesses because we're a family-run business. And they went out there and they tried many different sherry types with our spirit for many years, and discovered that the one the family liked the best was Oloroso. And the best Oloroso sherry they could get was from Miguel Martinez. So that's why they went there, and we still use him to this day. We spend, if I tell you that a single cask is about £1,200 each, and we bring in the region of 2,000 casks a year, fresh sherry casks. So it's a lot of money. But we also go to Spain every 2 or 3 years, and we check the casks when they have sherry in them. And if the sherry is a nice quality, we know that when we get the cask to us, the cask is going to be good quality to put our spirit in. So that's quite important as well. But it's all Oloroso. We don't use anything else. So we'll move on to the next one, which is a 1994. Again, it's a refill sherry butt, so it's second fill. Totally different on the nose. Totally different. You can see it's slightly less alcohol. It's 53.3. You're really getting quite a big sherry hit off of this. So obviously the first time it was filled, it hasn't taken just so much sherry out of it as it could have done. It's really deep, really dark. I get lots of dark chocolate, but listen, guys, I could sit here all day and tell you what I smell and what I taste. And please remember that everybody smells and tastes differently. So nobody's wrong in their opinion. If you say to me, Callum, I don't get dark chocolate or toffee, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Everybody's different. So everybody tastes things different. So I see different couples sitting together and friends sitting together. If you're both looking at each other saying, well, you're tasting this, but I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that. So just remember that. I can rabbit on all day about Christmas cake in a glass and apple crumble and dark chocolate, but it doesn't mean I'm right. It just means that's what I smell and taste. So just remember that. But this is, to me, in 1994, Glenfarclas was a really, really good year. It was a really cold year, which, like we've got right now, which helps make whiskey. The colder it is and wetter it is, the better whiskey we feel we can make. But the quality of casks in 1994 were really, really good. yeah, that is just, what can I say? Now, usually, guys, when I'm sitting doing a Glenfarclas family cast tasting in Sweden, it's 9:30 at night. I'm on a boat full of about 30 drunken Swedish people who want to talk to me but drink all the samples I've got left. So please talk to me, but unfortunately the samples I've got left, you're not getting tonight. I'm taking them up the road with me. So, but yeah, feel free to interact as much as you want, guys.
I wanted to ask, is the Oloroso that you still use there, is it the same that you have been using actually? Is it just the same Oloroso thing that you've been using since the 80s up until now? Or has there been changes in that, in that you have changed it in some point, or decided that maybe we will go into a different direction with that Oloroso that we put in the casks?
No, we generally want the same quality and same sherry as possible, but it's a bit like distilling whiskey. As the years go by, everything changes slightly, which means that you don't notice it. But one thing in a distillery, if you're changing anything or altering anything, you'd only do it one thing at a time and try not to alter the character of the spirit. Modernisation, you've got to watch if you're modernising any equipment, because you can alter the flavour slightly. So that's quite important to remember. But sherry, no, we like to think we're using the same type of sherry all the time, and it's not moved a lot off of it. So that's one of my team who's been out clearing the snow, just signalled to me that he's going home. So thanks. See you later, Argo. So yeah. So back to the sherry. We like to think it's the same, but we can't guarantee it. But it's like our whiskey. If you give me a bottle of 25-year-old from 25 years ago, and I open a bottle of 25-year-old today, it will be very similar, but it won't be identical. I can guarantee you that. So that's probably the best answer I can give you on that.
How many people do still drink sherry?
In Scotland, not a lot. In Scotland, sherry was something that your grandparents drank at Christmas time, and that was it. And there's not a big sale of sherry going on anywhere, to be honest.
So how is the outlook for getting sherry casks for whiskey production in the future?
The outlook's pretty good. The Spanish actually destroy sherry as well to allow them to get rid of casks, because obviously it's worth a lot of money to them. To be honest, I don't know what other markets to sell sherry to, but I know in our country, sherry's not a big... and there's some lovely sherries out there. If you actually sit and go through some different types of sherry, there are some lovely sherries out there. 2013, I went with Mr. Grant to the Sherry Bodega to check casks, and some of the sherries we were trying just out of this world. And I think if people were to try sherry more, there'd be a bigger appreciation for it, but right now there's not a massive appreciation for it. So 1994, again, it's 1 year older. It's slightly weaker in strength, but there's similarities. You can get that in the nose, the palate. Sludge.
Callum, coming back to casks, do you get any other casks from Spain than casks that are prepared for whiskey? I suppose it must be very, very difficult to get any casks that has had sherry for a long time inside. Well, as far as I know, most of the cask, or maybe every cask, are handled or treated with some sherry and then transported to Scotland, but they are produced to go further to Scotland and to have whiskey in it. Could guess that the sherry you got from the cask could distill it and make brandy maybe
My headphones have just went dead, so I'm going to have to. Can you guys still hear me? No, can't hear me. Give me 2 seconds. Technical hitch.
Oh, we hear you.
You can hear me now? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. It maybe be a little bit echoey now, but that's okay. No, our sherry casks have had wine or sherry in them for up to 5 years, so we always insist that they've been seasoned for 5 years in sherry before we get them here. Would we bring it here? No, but what we do have here is casks that had Glenfarclas in them that are now being used to mature different spirits. So we have cognac maturing at Glenfarclas, pine cognac in Glenfarclas casks, and we have Dictador rum maturing in Glenfarclas casks, and we've just done a gin for a very small gin distillery in Liverpool, and we've matured that gin in Glenfarclas casks. So we do have other things maturing in casks that have held Glenfarclas whiskey, but we don't mature Glenfarclas in any casks that's held something else.
Gin at Glenfarclas cask sounds very interesting. What's the name of that distillery?
Sorry?
What's the name of the gin distillery that's
using?
It's a Liverpool gin. The distillery is at Love Lane Brewery in Liverpool. So if you Google Love Lane Brewery gin, you would get the gin there. What we did was last February, I went to Liverpool and I took a cask down with me, and we distilled the gin and then put it in the cask, and then we sent the cask back up to Speyside, and we've matured it in #1 warehouse for so many months, nearly a year actually. It'll be a year and a half before it's bottled. And it's taken on a nice colour. It's very similar to the colour of the whiskey we're drinking right now. So, but the actual gin itself was distilled using lots of orange peel and orange flower. So it was really citrusy and fruity, citrus fruit. And that worked really well with the cask that had held Glenfarclas. So you got sort of the Glenfarclas nose coming through it, but you got a nice orangey toffee note. And the colour of the gin, as I say, it turned sort of this colour. So it's kind of orangey in colour as well. So it ties in really, really well. We're going to do it every so that was a third fill cask. We're going to do a first fill cask and a fourth fill cask and bring out a little series of them. So it's something quite unique that we're actually trying to do. So we'll move on to the 1997 family cask, which is sitting at 54.9, so it's only just over 1.5% stronger than the one you just tasted. When you see the colour of it though, now this is a first fill sherry bottle, so you can see the difference in colour straight away. I don't know if you guys can appreciate it in the camera there, but the colour is just night and day. Lovely in the nose, but it's got that massive Oloroso hit to it. Slight tickling on your nose as well, slight pepper on your nose. Let's open it up a little bit of water. So this was distilled in the first 2 months of the year in 1997. We know that by the cask number 453, means it was the 453rd cask of 1997 to be filled. So that would generally be sort of mid-February, this time of year. Lovely and sweet. We've got lots of Oloroso sherry notes coming through. You can pick that up straight away, that Oloroso coming in. Lots of dark chocolate. A little bit spicy. Well, I'm picking up it being a little bit spicy. get the difference with a first fill sherry cask. You feel it coating your mouth like velvet. Puts a lovely coating on your palate and on your tongue, whereas a third fill cask is a bit thinner. So you get lovely flavours coming through, but it's a little bit thinner, so it doesn't stick to your palate as much. But that just sticks straight to your palate. That's a lovely example of first fill Glenfarclas in an Oloroso cask. And when you nose that, you can see why the family decided that they would mature their whisky in Oloroso. I've tasted whisky Glenfarclas that's been in fresh bourbon cask because we sell whisky to other distillers, and it's nice, but it's not got that mouth feel, it's not got that velvety feel, it's not got that depth of taste in it. It just shows you what the cask brings to the party, as we say up here. Stunning. Any comments on this one?
I actually, this is absolutely great. I think a lovely nuttiness also there. A lot of those kind of after nuts. So you get the sherry coming in, then you get the alcohol coming in, and then the nuttiness starts to pump it up itself there. Very lovely.
Yeah, the taste just goes on and on and on. It just develops. Once you've swallowed that whiskey, the flavours are just keeping coming to the fore. Different, as you say, there's a nuttiness going on. There's almonds going on in there somewhere. It just keeps going on and on and on. It's one of these whiskies that you could sit with one glass all night and nose it and just sip away at it. It's just stunning. It's absolutely lovely. This is the reason that guys like me get up in the morning and make whiskey, is to get a product like this. It's just a lovely product.
A quick question for you, Callum. You mentioned snow, and when I visited the distillery like 2008 or something, I was told that you always had your supply in a buffer because you weren't sure that you had deliveries for a couple of days if there were heavy snow. Is that still something that you have to take into account at the distillery today?
We did up until sort of 2010 was the last heavy snowfall that we actually had at the distillery. We had maybe 3 or 4 foot of snow fell over a month. And then we've not had a lot of snow, so we've not had to worry about it too much. And then this year we've had snow since the day after Christmas, so since Boxing Day. It snowed every single day, which is quite unusual. And we've probably got, outside right now, maybe 1.5 feet of snow, but some of the snow drifts are 3, 4, 5 feet high. We've got roads shut today, heavy winds blowing the snow and it drifting up. So yeah, traditionally, yes, we kept lots of malt in stock because of the bad weather, so as we could allow to produce. And up until 2010, that was the case. The past 9, 10 years, there's been nothing. And then this year, we seem to have been hit really, really badly with snow. So yeah, it's just one of these things. People keep telling me over the past 10 years it's global warming, that there's no snow. And if they were at Glenfarclas this morning, they would know that it's not global warming, it's global bloody freezing is exactly what it is. So yeah, it's not unusual. It's not unusual.
So you're not running out of supplies at the moment?
No, we're not running out of supplies. But as I say, the gentleman who just walked past me 5 minutes ago, he was out in the tractor clearing the road with a snowplow to allow supplies to get in. And we have to do that 7 days a week, and we have to do it during the night as well. So you've got to remember, technology's moved on a wee bit as well. So we've got tractors and ploughs and different things on site. So we can keep it clear ourselves.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Or we'll just move on to the 2000 family cask. Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to the 2000 family cask, which is there's quite a story behind whisky in Glenfarclas in 2000. And I know I've told it at many tastings, and I've probably told it at tastings some of you guys have been at. But the story is that in 1999, at the end of the millennium, when everybody was being scared of the millennium bug and the world was coming to an end and computers wouldn't work and, you know, just the usual sort of things that people worry about every day. Aircraft would be falling out of the sky. John Grant came into the distillery and he filled 20 sherry butts with whiskey on the 31st of December 1999. And when he woke up on the 1st of January 2000, aeroplanes were still flying, computers were still working, and the world was still turning. And John Grant went back into the distillery and filled another 20 sherry butts with whiskey on the 1st of January 2000, which made us the only distiller in Scotland to have whiskey from the last day of the old millennium and the first day of the new millennium. And that shows you what the family values are here. John doesn't have a mobile phone. He doesn't have one today. He doesn't know how to work one. He knows how to make whiskey. He knows how to put good quality whiskey in a glass. So when people were worried in 1999 and 2000 that the world was going to stop and computers wouldn't work, and John just came in and made whiskey as normal because that's what he does and that's what he knows. And this whiskey you're going to taste from 2000, you see the colour straight away. The colour is just absolutely beautiful. Sherry cask, refill sherry butt, second fill, all the flavours coming through there. There's a little bit of that sort of boiled, spicy apple note coming through. But when you think of the foresight that Mr. Grant had to make whiskey at the start of the millennium, and nobody else did, it just sums up what we're all about. Wow. So I sit here today and I think to myself that, oh, whiskey that was made in 2000 is relatively young. It's not that old, but in actual real terms, it's nearly 21-year-old whiskey that we're drinking right now, which is just unbelievable. I also sit though and look at casks of whiskey from 1990 and think that they're not very old. Then I realise I've been in the whiskey industry nearly 32 years. So that kind of sums it up as well. But something at 20, 21-year-old like that, it's a lovely, lovely whiskey. Again, it's so deep in the nose. There's so much flavour coming through there. There's popcorn, there's chocolate, there's burnt caramel. Just lovely. So I think we'll try it. You know what it smells like, so I think we're going to try it and enjoy it. So again, slanty bar. Wow. I think we just have to sit and enjoy that one, because that to me is that is pretty stunning. That is just a lovely dram. That has everything in it that I would expect when I open a cask of Glenfarclas. When we're picking casks to put in our core range whiskey, when I pull that bung out of that cask and I nose it and I take a sample of it, that is what I expect to taste and nose. It's just stunning. And it's quite amazing to think that 21 years ago, just now, this whiskey was running through that spirit safe over there as a crystal clear liquid that looked like water. And now, 21 years later, we're sitting enjoying it in Scotland and Sweden. It's beautifully in amber coloured, it's got a lovely nose. It's given us all so much pleasure. So whoever it was at that still house that day cutting this spirit, he must have got his job right. So here's to him.
Well, I have to say that this what was it? This was the sixth one. I think actually being the youngest kind of here, but I have to say now this one packed one hell of a lot of taste in it. I think this was a very nice one. This one.
Yeah, it's got a lot of flavour profile. it's not got that big mouthfeel of the sherry bot that you tasted just before. That sort of stickiness in your palate, that velvety mouth coating. A little bit thinner, but you've got a lot of different flavours coming through, so it's not overpowered by the sherry. You're getting to appreciate what else is going on in the background, which is quite important. One thing we do at Glenfarclas is a really long fermentation during the process, and that gives us this nice boiled apple, stewed apple note. And then when you taste this and nose this, you definitely get that stewed sort of boiled apple note coming through it, and you get that nice spicy sort of flavouring as well. Yeah, stunning whiskey. Any thoughts on 2000?
I enjoyed it very much, actually. Of course, it's a bit younger, but a lot of flavors in this rather young whiskey compared. But I think it was a great dram. Really much flavors with blackberries, walnuts, leather, cigar tobacco. Well, just another exclusive dram from Glenfarclas, actually.
Thank you. Nice. Any other comments before we move on to the last whiskey, guys?
Well, I have to say that I think the Mr. Big Boss, I think he got it absolutely correct during the millennium change. Since if the world's gonna end, what the hell else are you gonna do? Well, why don't make a dram?
Yeah, you're right. But to be honest, John Grant, our current chairman, was quite. He has, and he still does have had some really good ideas. And I touched on it earlier when we were talking about 1986, how a lot of distilleries shut down in Scotland. And in Scotland, between 1981 and 1984, there was over 35 distilleries shut down and closed because there was a massive amount of whiskey in the world that wasn't as popular, nobody was drinking it. And some of these distilleries have never, ever reopened. And John Grant's decision was to go to his father and say, we're going to triple production and make as much whiskey as we can. We're not going to pay anybody off. We're not going to shut down. We're tripling production. And his father said to him, John, why would we do that? The whiskey industry's on its knees. It's really poor. Why would we do that? And John said, well, we're going to swim upstream. We are going to make whiskey when malted barley is cheap because nobody wants it. We're going to make whiskey when casks are cheap because nobody needs them. And we've got lots of warehousing space. We'll build more warehouses and we'll fill it up. And his dad said to him, John, I'm not sure this is a good idea, but we'll go with it. And John upped production by 3 times. And then come 1990, 91, 92, when blenders were looking for whiskey to put in blended whiskey, nobody had any. Glenfarclas did. So they had to come to John Grant and buy mature whiskey off of him to put in blends. And of course, if it cost John £1 to make it, when you come to him in 1991 and want to buy it, he's going to charge you £21. So he made lots of money off of it, which meant the company was able to grow so he could invest the money he had made by having the foresight to up production back in the company. And that's what he's did, and that's why we're in such a good position now. And our markets are good because he's been able to get it out there and he's had stock to get it out there. And that's testament to one person's way of thinking and saying, do you know what? I'm not going the way everybody else is going. They're all going that way. I'm going that way. And that's what sort of person John is. But being family run and being the man that owns the business, he can do that. And that's kind of how he lets us guys here, like me as distiller, that's what he lets me do. It's a case of Callum, you're the distillery manager, you make whiskey, and you do it your way. Just keep Glenfarclas like it should be. And that's fantastic. And that's down to the sort of way John works. So it's testament to somebody like John Grant that we've got these products sitting in front of us today. And it's all down to the family's foresight and ability to do their own thing. They've not got a corporate company and shareholders dictating to them. They do what they want to do, and that's important. So will we move on to the last whiskey, which I'm sure you all know, which is 105. 105 is just about the only bottling we do that doesn't have an age statement on it. And there is a very good reason for that. 105 is the first cask strength whiskey to be available in the market. And it was first available in 1968, commercially bottled. And the story comes about that in 1968, which was a very, very good year. I should add that. It was actually the year that I was born as well. So 68 was just a fantastic year for whiskey. But John Grant's father, George, was wondering what to give his friends for Christmas. And he went in the warehouse and he selected a single hogshead. And he got round about 250 bottles. And he took the strength of the liquid, and it was 105 proof, which in today's money is 60% alcohol. So he wrote on the label, "Merry Christmas, Glenfarclas 105." And he gave it to 240 of his friends. And then very shortly after, his friends came back and asked, "Where can we buy this, George? Where can we buy this 105 product?" And George Grant, being an astute businessman, decided that, oh, people are liking this. We'll start to do this. We have never changed the recipe for 105, apart from the fact that it was a single cask. The very first bottling was a single cask. It isn't anymore. And for a few years, we did make it a 10-year-old, but in 1968, when Mr. Grant selected it, it was only 8 years old. So over the past sort of 4 or 5 years, we've went back to 8-year-old whiskey in it. So it's 8-year-old whiskey, predominantly first fill sherry cask, as you can see by the colour. I've mentioned colour once or twice today, but what I'll say about colour is not important. Colour is not important to us. You can see that when we look at these two bottles together. They're both totally different colours. And you can see that when you look at our older whiskies that are in brown bottles. Every bottle of Glenfarclas, 15 years old and older, will be in a brown bottle. And the reason for that is to stop people tasting whiskey using their eyes. We want to get people to taste whiskey using their palate. And that is really important to us because we do not add colour to any of our products. So they're all unchill filtered, all uncoloured. So we tasted the 1993 family cask. Really, really light coloured, but everybody's raving about the flavour in it. So that's proof that colour doesn't matter. So 105 is just testament, again, to John's father. And he had the foresight to give us this in 1968. Lovely. It's one of our biggest selling core range whiskies in the world. So much so that in Taiwan, we have a 105 day, that in the 105th day of the year, we have a massive party and an address that's 105 High Street, wherever it may be. There's 105 guests at it, and it's a really fantastic day. Again, though, as I say, it's cask strength, so this has not been diluted at bottling. So to get the whiskey at that strength, we would cask it at 68%. So when we distill it, we put it in cask at distillation strength. Normally, for other whiskies, we'll reduce that to 63.5%. This will be put in at 68%. So as in 8 years' time, when we open that cask, it will still be sitting around about 62, 61% alcohol. We will then add older whiskies to it. So there's whiskey in there that's 10, 15 years old to bring the strength down to exactly 60% alcohol. So there's no water added to it whatsoever. So everything you're drinking in there is exactly as it was matured at Glenfarclas, and it's a marrying together of casks from 15-year-old down to 8-year-old to get us that 60-year-old strength. So I've talked about it quite a lot. I know you'll enjoy it. It's a lovely whiskey. On a day like it is outside here at Glenfarclas, this is exactly what you need to warm you up. So again, cheers, guys. Wow, for a whiskey that's only 8 years old, and we're talking minimum age 8 years old, that punches way above its weight. I mean, that could be something that's 12 or 15-year-old in that glass when you taste it, when you get that quality, that depth of flavour. Just an absolutely awesome product. One that we are very proud of. And part of my role at Glenfarclas is to select the casks for all our core range and our family cask range along with George Grant. But every cask, every bottle of Glenfarclas, I will have selected the casks for it. I'll have nosed them, I'll have tasted them. And when you taste 105, you just think, wow, it's pretty special. It's pretty good. Any comments, guys, on 105 or anything else you've tasted, or questions in production, or?
Yeah, on the list. 105, 20 years old. Is it coming back?
No, but we did a 22-year-old 2 years ago. It'll be nearly 3 years ago for it being 50 years old. So we brought out a 22-year-old. We are looking at a different age of 105 to bring out as a special bottling. I won't tell you what age, but it's a little bit younger than 20, but it's a bit older than 10. And we're looking at doing something with that in the near future as well.
Looking forward to that.
We're also bringing out a whiskey to celebrate 185 years of legal distilling, and it should be coming out this year as well. So it's one to look out for. It's pretty special. It's got whiskies from the 50s right through to 2000s, and it's going to be a really special dram as well.
Is it coming to Sweden?
It should be coming to Sweden. I can ask our salesperson who deals with Sweden to make sure it does, Monica, that it comes to Sweden. So I will talk to Ian and make sure it does, but there's no reason why it can't.
Cross our fingers.
I will have a word with them on Monday.
Great news.
I know also that we're doing a single cask bottling for Sweden as well. I think it's a 2011 hogshead that I selected in the warehouse that's getting bottled in the next 6 weeks. I think it is, and it's coming out to Sweden as well.
Perhaps a special bottling for our whiskey club?
I'm not sure who it's for, to be honest. I was only asked to go and select a cask, told it was going to Sweden, but it could be for your whiskey club. I'm not just certain, but I know that it's getting bottled within the next 6 weeks, and it's a pretty special dram, to be honest with you.
But if it isn't for our whiskey club, we can make it happen later on, I hope.
I can find out exactly who it's for on Monday if you want, and drop somebody an email.
Janne, I really like the way you're thinking now.
Tänker lika i Forsa.
We can't be talking in Swedish when I'm here because I don't understand Swedish.
Can you give us a little bit of an idea when said that, okay, now there's a bottling that needs to go somewhere, and you said, okay, you went to the warehouse and you picked a Huggy from there. But how did you go about on doing something like that? So is it something that, well, can you describe us how it proceeds when you think, but okay, now I have to pick something out for some occasion. So how do you go about it?
Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would ask who it is the whiskies for, what they're looking for. Is it a first fill cask? Is it a second? Is it a third fill? Then I'd ask them how old they want it to be. And then the big question is, how much money do you have? And how many bottles do you want? And then they'll tell me roughly a budget, what year, and how many bottles. Now, if they're wanting 400 or 500 bottles, it has to be a sherry butt that we'll look at. If they're wanting 200 or 300 bottles, it'll be a hogshead. So that's the first thing. I need to know how many bottles they want. And then I can then look at our stocks. I can look at locations of where they are in the warehouses. And I'll maybe pick off 30 or 40 casks, and I'll get the head warehouseman, and I'll go in the warehouse, and we'll start to open the casks, and we'll nose them. So I'll nose the whiskey first. And then I'll take a note of the ones that I like on the nose. We'll maybe get that list down to maybe 20 casks, and then I'll go back and we'll open them again, and we'll take a glass in like these nosing glasses I've got here. We'll nose it again, and then we'll taste it. So we'll taste the whole 20 or 30 casks. I'd like to say that at that point, we spit the whiskey out, but we never ever spit whiskey out in Scotland. So we taste properly the 20 or 30 casks, and then we'll put it to a top sort of 4 or 5. At that point, we'll take the whiskey from the warehouse in a small bottle, warm it up in the office, nose it, taste it again. If they're all fine, we would send them to the customer and say, right, this is 4 or 5 I've selected. You pick what one you want. Sometimes they will want to do that themselves. Other times they will just say, no, I don't want the samples. You pick what one you want. So we'd sit another couple of days, let it warm up, and then try them again, and then just make the decision it's A, B, C, or D, and that would be it. So it's quite a horrendous job when it's -5 outside and you have to go in the warehouse and taste 30 casks of whiskey. You can imagine how painstaking that is, and how my wife feels when I go home at night having tasted 30 or 40 whiskies. It's just, it's the worst job in the world.
Yeah, I absolutely pity you and your wife.
Yeah. So that's how we go about doing it. So it's let the customer tell us what they want and how many bottles they want. Move forward from there and select something that we think suits your palate. You've got to remember everybody's palate's different as well, and something that I like, they might not. So that's why we generally try and give them a choice of 4. But a lot of the time it'll just be straight up. You pick it, Callum, and that's it. Which is a pleasure to do, you know, lovely thing to do.
Callum, it's Anders here. Shall we tell the truth about this bottling?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it. It will be a Glenfarclas 2011 for SMAD. One first fill sherry hogshead, and it will be approximately 350 bottles. And if you look at your email from SMAD, pretty soon you can order it right now if you want. It will go out to every members in the club. And you heard it first here on this tasting.
And intresseanmälan.
Yeah, yes. Because we don't know when it will be delivered to Sweden, and it's 1,600 Swedish crowns for it. Approximately 58% ABV, I think.
So as Anders said, you heard it here first. So guys, when you taste it, you won't be disappointed. I can promise you that.
Great. good news.
So do we have any more questions about what we do at Glenfarclas? Anything at all, just ask.
Yes, a question regarding what we just discussed, going out in the warehouse, tasting different casks. Price-wise, a first fill or a second fill, what's the difference?
Well, first fill is going to be more expensive.
Yeah, is it 20% or 50% or?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. That's not my department. That's our sales team's department. I'm here to produce it, taste it, make sure it's okay. When it comes to selling it, not my department.
Okay.
Sorry, I can get that answer for you, but as I say, it's not something I deal with directly.
Do you have any plans for this year's family cask release?
Yeah, it's something we'll start to look at in March, actually. Because of obviously what's going on, we've just bottled last year's family cask, and we actually selected that ourselves. It was supposed to go out to a tasting, but we selected it ourselves just due to current situation. So this year we'll go in and select this year's family cask. The process for selecting the family cask is that myself and one of my colleagues will go in and pick what we think again is the best sort of 5 whiskies from what we want to give. So if last year's was a first fill sherry cask, we might go third fill this year or second fill or whatever. And then we'll give it to George, and George Grant will say, well, I like that, but give me whatever. And generally, the way it's picked, the first one of the year is that George does a tasting during the Whisky Festival, and the public vote for that, the best one, their favourite. This year, the Whisky Festival isn't happening, so it will be down to George Grant and myself to pick the family cask. So I don't know if any of you actually know George Grant. When I say I go in and taste 30 or 40 whiskies, when George is picking the family cask with me, he might want to taste 50 or 60 whiskies because he likes a little dram. But things are a bit more up in the air with what's going on in the world. So it will be down to George and myself this year to pick it, and we'll look at it in March. This is when we'll go in and have a look.
Callum, are you running the distillery at the moment, and you can also answer a second question. How are you affected by the Brexit?
So we are running the distillery without any problems right now, touch wood. We stopped production in March, when this virus came in. We restarted production in May, and we worked right through summer, which was the first time in our whole history. We've worked 32 production weeks without stopping, which was good. So it's not really had a big effect on us that way. We've stopped visitors getting on site, so we're not open to the public or shops shut. So we've only got our employees on. We're actually in a 6-day production, so as I said earlier, the stills are still warm sitting next to me. That's why I'm sitting here in the shirt, because everything's still warm in here. So the stills are only off this morning. We're making about 370 casks of whisky a week, which is about 68,000 litres of alcohol. So virus-wise, nothing's changed here. We're still doing exactly what we're doing. Brexit-wise, yeah, slightly different labelling. We've got to change our labels to get bottles into Europe, which is a bit of a blow, but nothing major. I should state on the sales of whisky, and I saw figures yesterday saying that Scotch whisky's exports were down by £1.8 billion in 2020 due to Brexit and COVID-19. Our sales were not down, but we do not sell in airports, in duty-free in airports and things. So you'll find that the majority of whisky sales that were down were people who sell through duty-free airports and places like that. We don't do that. You won't see Glenfarclas here. So our sales have not really been affected hugely. Brexit, affected us more before Brexit, if you know what I mean, because people were buying whiskey thinking Brexit was going to disturb everything, so they would buy lots of whiskey, and then Brexit never happened, so they would drink all the whiskey they've got, and then they'd buy lots of whiskey again, so it was like peaks and troughs all the time. But now that it's happened, to be honest with you, it's not had a big effect on us, guys. The trade deal that the Prime Minister struck up has been pretty good. It's not had a massive effect. And somebody asked me that last week doing a tasting, and the other thing is, remember that when people are unhappy and sad, the one thing they do is drink alcohol. And when people are very happy and jubilant, the other thing they do is drink alcohol. So we're kind of in a win-win situation here, that Brexit made people a bit unhappy, so they just drank anyway. And now they're getting happier, they're going to drink some more. So it's not really had a huge effect on us, apart from changes to labels. That's the one thing that has happened. But that's a more internal thing that we've got to deal with. So no, it's not been a big problem.
When did you make your last visit to the pub?
Oh God, the last visit to the pub. Wow, there's a question. Do you know, I was actually at the pub on Christmas Eve for something to eat. And I had 2 pints of lager and a gin and tonic. But to go to the pub, that was with my family, to go to the pub with friends and just get drunk, my goodness, it must have been when I was in Cinderella last year. That was the last time I was in a bar with lots of people, was Cinderella last year, which was that February? January, February time?
I think so. Are you allowed to go to the pub where you live?
No, pubs are all shut, shops are all shut.
Mm.
The only thing that's open is essential shops, so pharmacies and food shops, nothing else is open. Is it the same in Sweden? Everything's shut?
No, we are not we don't have so clear rules, but you are not allowed to serve alcohol after 8 o'clock in the evening, which means that it is very, very difficult to have a restaurant or a pub. So I think it is very few people that goes to the pub because of these restrictions.
Yeah. All the restaurants here are shut as well. There's no restaurants open. Everything is shut. You can do takeaway food. Some restaurants are doing takeaway food, but you're not allowed in the shop to pick it up. You have to pick it up on the street. So restrictions are really, really tight. We're not allowed to travel in Scotland. We're not allowed to travel to different parts of Scotland. We've got to stay within 5 miles, which is 7.5 kilometres of your own home. So you're not allowed to go anywhere. So it's it's quite difficult.
Have you ever tried to do anything with red wine casks or Chateau Yquem, for example, for your whiskey? Have you ever tried to do something with that?
No, not here. I did it where I used to work, and I see the companies released some of the red wine casks. I've never done it here. We're very, very traditional. We feel that the product we've got people like, and they know what it is. And what we don't want to do is try different things and then people maybe dislike it. All we have is this one brand. We don't have anything else. So it's important that we try and keep it consistent. So that's one of the reasons that we never ever sort of trial other whiskey cask types. You'll see the odd port cask Glenfarclas, but you won't get finishes. It's something we don't do is finish whiskey or mature in other casks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, guys?
I'm happy. Thank you for the tasting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, everybody, it's time to do some voting about the best whiskey of tonight. Gonna traditional way. We're gonna do a pulse, and you fill in the best whiskey, the second best, and the third best whiskey.
Redan nu?
Yep.
Jag har inte. Jag har gjort. Nej. Jag tror det.
One question, Callum. If you were to think about yourself personally, what would be what do you think would be your preference for Glenfarclas in age-wise? Where do you think it fits and sits the best?
Without a doubt, 21-year-old. 21 for me is just, it's like heaven. It's the best whiskey in the world is 21-year-old. And I will always say that wherever I go. It's also our chairman's wife's favourite, it's Mrs. Grant's favourite whiskey. It's just the reason we get up and make whiskey in Scotland. It's the reason I go to work is what 21-year-old whiskey is. It's just a stunning whiskey.
And you do you prefer yourself, as said, putting down to maybe up down to 43, or do you prefer, if you could yourself pick it up, that it would be something maybe higher, or I don't know, even lower? Or do you think that 43 then is that?
No, I'm quite content with it at 43, and again I select a cask for it and marry all the whiskey together to get what's in that final bottle. But when I drink it, I put water in it and I'll dilute it nearly 50%. But there's two reasons for that. So as I talked about throughout the whole tasting, the first reason I put water in whiskey is to get all the flavour profile coming through in the nose and get what flavours are in there. And the second reason is it makes the bottle last a lot longer if you half it with water, and that's quite important. When you're sitting at home, you want that whiskey to last longer, so add some water to it and it lasts just a little bit longer in the evening. It means you've not got so much whiskey in your glass.
So that was an economical tip, actually.
Yeah, that as well, yeah. I've never seen Monica so quiet as what she has been today, though.
Yes, you have.
She misses the boat.
Maybe you think of my sister.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. Oh, double trouble.
It's good to have you here, Callum.
Thank you. It's lovely to see some familiar faces. You know, when you've been locked down since March and you're not going anywhere, it's really nice to see faces from other countries which you're not seeing every day of the week anymore. You know, the distillery's been quite empty with no visitors. We normally get 25,000 people a year through this still house, and in the past year we've had nobody. So it's really quite strange. So yeah, it's nice to see familiar faces, to be honest.
Thank you.
We can say that we're eagerly waiting the COVID-19 situation to disappear so we can come and visit your lovely visit center.
Oh, nice. Well, I'll tell you what, you're all more than welcome to come and see us once it's all done. We're hoping that we'll be reopened in August this year. That's what we really hope for.
I tried to get things together with the voting, so Richard Keller, are you with us? Do you have something to say about your company?
Yes, I'm here. I was delayed today, unfortunately, so I came in late. Well, I'm very happy to see such a huge number of participants in this tasting, and I'm very glad for your whiskey club to organize this. And I see there are some 60 plus people here, which is great. And as you all been saying, you know, we're all waiting to come along and go to Scotland again, because it's been far too long now. But we thank you for your support, and thank you, Callum, for arranging this tasting, and all the best to the team at Glenfarclas.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure, as I say. We've done a lot of these Zoom tastings, but I've been kind of looking forward to this one. I kind of see Sweden as I've got a soft spot for Sweden and Swedish people, and I think it's lovely to be doing it. When somebody said to me, "Do you want to do it?" There wasn't any moment's hesitation in saying, "Yes, I do want to do this one, so let's get it done." So that's important. So yeah, it's lovely to sit here and share a nice dram with you and talk through what we do at Glenfarclas.
Yeah. And regarding the special bottling for the Whiskey Club, I think after discussing with Ian, I think we will see it start bottling sometime in March, and hopefully we will be able to get it out of Broxburn during early April. So hopefully arriving in Sweden sometime during April, but I'll keep you updated on that one.
Nice. That will be nice. That we're looking forward to.
Me too.
Mm.
Yeah, you won't be disappointed with it. I can guarantee you that. It's a nice whiskey.
What about if I can ask one more question? What do you think in general? Have you noticed, is there differences between, for instance, how clientele in Europe versus clientele in Asia, what they actually prefer? Of course, Glenfarclas line it's pretty similar in a way, that since you don't have finishes and these kind of things. But have you noticed the difference in preferences between different parts of the world?
Yeah, well, there are differences in flavour profile, but there's also differences in attitude towards pricing. So in some countries in Asia, some people are quite driven by price. So they want, for whatever reason, they want to buy more expensive whiskey because it gives them a better status. That's their personal choice. In some countries in Europe, in France, for instance, they like quite young alcohol, so they're quite happy with whiskey that's 7-8-year-old, quite high strength alcohol. You guys, Sweden, sort of Netherlands as well, Germany, they like whiskey around about 15, 18, 20-year-olds. Generally speaking, that's the sort of window we're looking at, holding 12 to 15-year-old. That's a sort of, and that's a nice area to be honest, because it's a really approachable area. So the sort of new make-ness has came off of it. It's not fiery, it's not hot. It's pretty rounded, it's pretty flavoursome. It's attractive in price as well, but the quality of that whiskey is really good. So yeah, there are variants all over the place. Germany is our biggest market in the world, and the biggest seller in Germany is 15-year-old and 105. And 105 is cask strength whiskey at 60%. So it sort of shows you what their palate's like. But again, it's all down to personal choice and cultures, and a lot of people now have started pairing whiskey with different foods. So it's not just the case that they're just drinking whiskey, they're pairing it off of foods. And depending on their palate, if they eat spicy food as a rule in their country, they'll maybe go for a higher strength alcohol because it kind of kicks off that spiciness. Whereas if they're eating softer food, they'll maybe go for a slightly lower strength with more sherry in it because it's more velvety and more approachable, softer. So yeah, a lot of it depends on what they eat as well. So you sort of see a lot of that coming in nowadays. The other thing we're seeing, and I've seen it massively in Sweden, is how approachable whiskey is becoming to younger people and younger females. Before, especially in Scotland. Scotland was bad that whiskey was seen as being an old person's drink, and it was always an old man drinking whiskey. But nowadays, especially in Europe, whiskey is so much more drunk by younger people and younger women as well. They're developing a palate for it, a taste for it, and they're very interested in it. And that's fantastic to see, because it means the future of Scotch whiskey is pretty much guaranteed when you've got younger people drinking it and you've got both sexes drinking it, and that's really, really good to see.
Okay, we have a result of the best whiskey of tonight, and the best whiskey will be number 5, the Family Cask 1997. It's 110 points. And for second place, we have a Family Cask 2000 for 91 points. And for third place, we have Family Cask 1993, 65 points. And for fourth place, we have Family Cask 1994, 64 points. And for the fifth place, we have Family Cask 1986 for 61 points. And then on the sixth place, we have a 25-year-old and 105. It's a similar 18 points.
Ettan och tvåan. Trean mitt.
Kan du repetera ordningen en gång till?
Whiskey number 5, 110 points. Whiskey number 6, 91 points. Whiskey number 3, 65 points. Whiskey number 4, 64 points. Whiskey number 2, 61 points. And then whiskey number 1 and 7, 18 points. And the price for this whiskey, if you find it in the shops, it's the Glenfarclas 25 is 1,800 crowns in Sweden. And the Family Cask 1986 will cost 5,500. And Family Cask 1993, 2,800. Family Cask 1994, 2,800. And Family Cask 1997, 2,200. And the Family Cask 2000 is for 2,000 crowns. And the 105, 730 crowns at Systembolaget. And our club wants to thank you, Richard Keller, for arranging this tasting for you from Sweden. And thank you to Callum, direct from Scotland. And if you will come to Sweden, we think that you will come to Sweden to our club, but you couldn't. So we will send something from Sweden to you. Because if you visit our club in Borlänge, SMAD, you will get one of these Dalecarlian horse. And but you aren't here. But I will send it to you.
Lovely, thank you very much. That's very kind.
Is it best to send it to the distillery or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
just send it to the distillery now. I'm always here.
In your name, yes. You get it from us.
Yeah.
And thank you very much from Sweden, Borlänge.
No, thank you guys for all looking in, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. I really hope that we'll get to Sweden this year. I'm not convinced that we will, but if not, hopefully we'll be there at the start of 2022, and we'll get to see you all again in the flesh and have a couple of drams. And yeah, been lovely chatting to you all, as I say. Yeah, have a good rest of your Saturday evening. And I will go around and have a wee look around the distillery and lock it up for the weekend. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Thank you, Colin, for this tasting. And
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so I will now leave the tasting and let you chat amongst yourself, and I will, as I say, go and lock up the distillery and head home. Unless you've got any more questions. If there's any more questions, just say, and if not, I'll leave the Zoom call.
Callum, a last final question. If there will be another voting for Scottish independence, do you think the result of that voting will be different from the first one?
I hope not.
A hypothetical question, I understand, but anyway.
I don't think it will be any different from the last time.
You don't?
No. I think in Scotland and in probably the world press, all everybody hears is what the Scottish National Party are saying and what they're doing. They don't actually hear what anybody else's opinion is. If I told you that 4 days before the last referendum vote, the yeses were at 57% of the vote, and when it went to the vote, the yeses were 49% or whatever it was. So the silent majority went out and voted, and that's what will happen again. We will never be independent of the UK.
I mean, in my eyes, you are such a pride patriots.
Yeah, but we couldn't survive if we were independent. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the finances. I mean, we can't sell whiskey and tartan all year, and that's
okay.
That's what Nicola Sturgeon is building a budget on. So no, no, we would never be independent, and I hope we're never independent.
Okay, thank you for an honest answer.
But that's only my opinion, not the company opinion, I will say. I think they would agree with me.
Anyway, thank you for being honest to us.
No, you're welcome. I'm always honest. You can guarantee that.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Callum. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yes, hopefully I'll follow your Instagram and see what you're up to.
Bye.
Okay, so I will just leave then, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Tack allihopa för ikväll. Hoppas vi syns om 14 dagar igen med Alex Bruce och Jenny Karlsson från Adelphi. God natt.